If everyone is here, I think we are ready to begin. So hi, everybody. My name is Haley. I'm the head of learning here at ProWritingAid, and today we are here for our write-in, and I'm really excited to have Michelle here with me. This is going to be Michelle's very first webinar with us, so please treat her kindly. And Michelle, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Michelle Adams. I am ProWritingAid's Social Engagement Manager. I just joined ProWritingAid in November, and it's been such an amazing experience, and I am so happy to be assisting with webinars now moving forward. So can't wait to see what you guys all write today. I'm so excited, and we're going to have a great time.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will go ahead and dive in really quickly. Before we started, there were a couple questions about Fantasy Week. So if you have an affiliate code, you can use your own link to register. That's totally fine. And then you get credit for that. And then, yes, you can totally invite non-ProWritingAid users to Fantasy Week. It's totally free for everybody. The last day does have a couple of premium only sessions, but most 8 out of 10 sessions are for everyone. So they can go. All right, so we're gonna get started with the write-in. Let me make sure I just have my chat feature so I can keep up with you guys. Oh no, it's disappeared. All right, there we go. Okay, so today at the write-in, we're talking all about outlining, which I am really excited about because outlining has saved me a ton of time as I work through writing both fiction, so long form fiction, and then also just writing in my day-to-day. I'd love to hear from you guys. Who considers themselves an outliner, and who is like more of a kind of a pantser, someone who flies by the seat of their pants? Tell me in the chat. Are you somebody who loves to outline, or are you somebody who just kind of writes as they go? Ernie is a pantser. Barbara too. Oh, lots of pantsers here. Pamela's never used one. Daryl's a planner. Laura is trying hard to be an outliner. Yes, Laura, you and I are the same. I am trying to be an outliner because I know that every single time that I have an outline, I write better and more efficiently and more effectively. So my goal today is for those of you who are pantsers, or even for those of you who are trying to be an outliner like me, or even for those of you who are expert outliners, that we get a little bit of practice at it, and then we can use those outlines as we move forward. I think one of the key things for me to remember here about outlining is that an outline isn't a set of shackles or chains. I think what helped me was thinking that an outline is actually something that's kind of like my guide. And so for me, it doesn't necessarily work to write out every single thing, but it does work to have this like loose overall structure that I'm working towards, because then that can help me keep on track and make sure that I'm not taking a lot of detours in my writing. So that's how outlines have helped me. But I think one of the great things about outlining is that there's just so many different types of outlines that you can do. So let's take a look at a couple of them. Again, one of the things that was really interesting for me as I was preparing to learn more about this was that there are a lot of different types of outlines that you can try. So if, again, writing out every single scene in your novel and planning character beats and that type of thing is not for you, that's fine. You can try something else. So here's a couple types of outlines that you can think through that a lot of writers use. One is the mind map, and this is one I'm actually trying out now. And the mind map is basically a visual approach that shows relationships between your plot points, characters, conflicts, all that type of stuff. You can think about it as like those kind of crazy maps where you have like somebody's name in the center and then the web kind of, the spider web pieces moving out from there. So that's one of the ways that you can do an outline. Another way that I usually do is through a synopsis. So a synopsis is kind of like a story outline that gives a brief overview of the main kind of beats in the story, where you're kind of going through all of those, going through your plot, your characters, your conflicts, that type of thing. And it's more general rather than specific scenes and that type of thing. Another common one is the beat sheet, which basically documents the beats of the outline, and basically every beat gets kind of a bullet that you work through. Skeleton is another kind of big roadmap where you have your big name destinations. This is another one that I'm very fond of, where I go through my kind of overall bigger events, and then I let my scenes breathe a little bit and have kind of the different things that are happening within each scene happen a bit more organically, but I'm kind of still working towards these larger destinations. Another one you can do is have a character first outline. So character led, where you're kind of prioritizing the different character arcs and how different characters will develop and interact with each other as they go through. And then another one you can do is scenes and sequences. So you can talk through different sequences within different arcs, and set up all the scenes that are kind of leading to the rising action, the rising action and the climax within those arcs, and then falling out from there. These are just a few. There are so many types of outlines. I know I saw Save the Cat in here, which is like a way that a lot of people approach plotting. A lot of people will just look at the hero's journey and plot to the hero's journey. There really isn't a right or wrong way to outline. I think the important thing here to remember is, again, that this is something that you want to look at and see what makes sense for me, and then apply it to, your writing process and how you like to write. So even if that's just as simple as sketching, an idea in a circle in the middle of a piece of paper, that can serve as an outline. What we're really kind of referring to when we talk about outlining is that initial thought process where you're thinking through, what am I kind of working towards? What are my larger themes? And that type of thing. So that's what we're going to practice today. Okay, so today's sprints are all going to be focused on outlining. Now, a couple things to think about as we approach these, because I know that there are some people here for the first time. Each of our sprints, you're going to have a set of instructions, and then you're going to have a timer that I will start. This first one is 5 minutes, where your goal is just to get as many words as you can down. The goal is to just get it down. You do not have to be perfect. It does not have to be polished. No worries at all. We're just getting stuff down as much as you can in the time allotted. If you would like to work on an existing project, that's totally fine. If you'd like to work on a new project, that's totally fine. If you want to work on fiction or nonfiction or a blog article, all of that is fair game. So please feel free to work on whatever you're writing on, especially in this sprint about outlining. So our first one is going to be for 5 minutes, and our goal is just to write down all of the main points here. So it doesn't have to be fast, it doesn't have to be in order, but just with your story, we're working on 5 points, for 5 minutes on the main points that you want to occur in your story. Again, it could be a current one or a future one or a blog post or anything like that. Once you've gotten your main list down, if you have time, you can put them in timeline order if they're not in timeline order. But this is going to be our first sprint, is just to get down all of the main points for our first story. Okay, it's going to be 5 minutes. I'm going to start the timer. Michelle and I will go off camera. And then when we come back, you are going to be free to share them in the chat. So 5 minutes starting now. See you in 5 minutes. About 1 minute left. Okay, we will bring it back together. So for those of you who are with us for the first time, we're going to drop in the comments your favorite part from what you wrote from your outline. And then I'm really curious to hear from you guys what was challenging and easy about this prompt, about writing down the points. As people get things into the chat, I will say that one of the things that I always struggle with is the middle. So I feel like I have a very good sense of when I'm outlining my first few kind of scenes and points where I'm connecting and introducing my first couple characters. And then I usually have a sense of where I'm going at like the climax into the kind of like falling action, but the middle is really challenging for me. And I always kind of struggle with like how to connect those scenes. So for me, again, the first few things that I write down are really easy. And then the last ones are really hard. So go ahead and drop into the chat what you wrote, and then Michelle and I are just going to kind of take a look through it. So Jack's story kind of kicks off with an argument with a wife who is grieving the loss of their child. And then so I think, Jack, you're writing some sci-fi here because they're working on an Android, asking for an Android replacement. And then they're going through, okay, cool. Awesome. So they've got the kid coming in, and then there's something is going wrong with it. Awesome. Cynthia starts off with the house having weird energy. Yeah, Annie said same thing as me, that she knows the beginning and end well, but struggles with the middle. Yeah, Jack, I figured that there's going to be some points after that. Totally fine. All right. Liz enjoys when the husband's killer is found. That's great. So Daryl, it looks like Daryl's got kind of like some themes happening here. Good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, but it comes out all right in the end. I think this is interesting because, again, it kind of goes to, sometimes I think outlining speaks to what our strengths as a writer are. And so for me, I am good at thinking through plot points and like connecting those types of things, but I don't always think in themes. So it's interesting to see Daryl's, because I feel like Daryl, this theme of what's is coming through really clearly in yours. Wesley, so you're working on something that's been dormant for ages. Wesley, you're not going to work on your short story that's due tomorrow? Just kidding. You can do whatever you'd like. Okay, Michelle, do you notice, what are you looking at in the chat?
I am looking at from Marv. She says about her character Elizabeth. So first she's receiving a mysterious pendant from a stranger. Then she witnesses a stranger's murder, who's also looking for the pendant. And then she discovers the pendant is not what it seems, but a strange compass pointing to something. That sounds interesting. And then she brings in the B story.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I'm
like
always like struggling. I have my A story, always great, but then I struggle with my B story. Looks like yohobren@gmail.com also has some really great themes coming on here. Rich has something around benefits. So the agency advised Mr. Brown that he was available, but he only received some. Oh, and then we're going all the way to the circuit court case. Daryl found this easy, which is, I'm impressed by you. So it will be part of your short story, Leslie. That's fine. Okay. All right. It's really interesting to see. I think one of my favorite parts of these write-ins is to see how everybody just comes through and has really different approaches to different things. Like I was saying, some people who are coming through with really, really in-depth themes, and then some people who are coming at it again, kind of the way that I do, which is very, very specific plot beats. It seems like a lot of people have kind of a loose idea. So this first exercise was easier. So let's go into our second sprint. So that for this second sprint, we're going to talk about character arcs. So we're going to test out, remember at the beginning of this, we talked through a number of different types of outlines. So this first one that we tried was basically a pretty simple standard, just kind of get beats, plot points onto a piece of paper and order them if we can. In this second one, we're going to work on a character arc. So character arcs kind of trace the journey of a character throughout your story, or even throughout a larger series of stories. I think Wendy in the chat was mentioning that they're working on a trilogy or a three-part story. So character arcs can also trace across a number of different stories if you're writing a series. But basically, a character arc is tracing the kind of journey of that character over the course of your story. Again, short story, novel length, or series. Character arcs can typically be positive. So, somebody improves over the course of that story. They can be negative. So a villain descending into madness or descending into something else, or they can be flat where the character typically stays the same. This might be typically flat character arcs are for secondary characters or for somebody who is not necessarily as important to the story, but they can also be with your main characters as well. But typically we see kind of positive or negative character arcs throughout. So throughout this, you're going to be picking one of your characters and answering the following questions. And you're totally right in the chat. It could be he, she, or they. I can fix these slides, but your characters does not need to be a male or a female or have a gender that they are assigned to at all, or that they're choosing for themselves at all. But basically, you're going to pick one of your characters from here, and you're going to be answering the following questions for these for this sprint. First, what does your character want or need, right? Whatever the character you're focusing on, what do they want or need and why? Second, who or what is keeping them from what they want or need? What are the personal flaws or weaknesses that emerge during this ordeal? How do they keep this character from their goals? What are the inner struggles that are keeping them from achieving this ultimate goal? And then what will they do to accomplish this goal? So again, picking one of our characters and thinking through these questions and the journey of them throughout the entire story that you're working on. This is a little bit more challenging of a sprint. So we're gonna have 10 minutes to work on this. Again, it does not need to be a male character. You can use any character that you would like. We will go ahead and get started now. We've just over a minute left. Okay, bringing it back together. And Mary, thank you so much for sharing that this has been helpful. I find these sessions really helpful as well. I think it's just fun to be with other people who are working on the same thing. Okay, so if you haven't already, feel free to share your character arc in the chat, as well as, what was easy about this, what was hard about this. I'm curious also to know if you found thinking about your outline this way different, whether that's more challenging or easier than thinking about it in terms of plot points. For me, I think that I like to do a little bit of both. I think that I actually tend to do character arc plotting more for my secondary characters or even tertiary characters, because I focus very heavily on the main character when I'm writing out my plot points. So thinking for me through, what are the journeys that I want my other characters to go on can be really helpful for me as I'm thinking through things. Pamela says it was easier. This one was easier. Annie found it easier to use questions than to just write off the cuff. Yeah, I hear that, Annie. Someone, Hatematsu, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correct, says, I accidentally discovered new parts of the main plot by exploring a secondary character, which I'm always into. And Daryl says, I'm really intrigued by Annie's outline, which is great. I think that's always fun for us too, is just seeing what other people are creating in here. Okay, so let's go back through. I'm going to read through some, Michelle, and if you want to pick out a couple too, I'm going to go back up to the beginning. I was really interested in Fyodor's because Fyodor, I read yours through a couple times. Fyodor's lead character is a revived toy who wants to live alongside the creators of the Revive and Zoom camera. And I'm just really fascinated with Fyodor. That's so creative, and I just can't wait to see what's coming through. So as I saw that come through, I was like, oh my gosh, this story looks so cool. Marv is working on a flat character arc for Elizabeth, who we were talking about before, which is really interesting. And Elizabeth is kind of, I liked how Marv said that Elizabeth's moral compass is true, but the game that this entity is playing is designed to confuse and force her into compliance. So she's kind of maintaining that state, but she's struggling to maintain that state throughout. Yeah, Michelle, anything that stuck out to you?
Yeah, so PLF1 at Roadrunner.com said that his lead character wants to hide from an abusive priest. He grows up and moves to the Pacific Northwest. He connects with a nun who lived in the town where he had been abused, and he's going to help her solve a murder. So that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. James has Steve traveling through a small diner, feeling a connection that he can't explain, and discovers this past that he knows nothing about, which is really interesting. I love, I'm a sucker for a family drama in my personal reading habits. arwsch@gmail.com has some fantasy going on, being kidnapped by sparkling lights and put into a violent new world. She has to help the ancients to get home, and she has to find an unnamed sorceress. I really like, a lot of people, a common thread that I'm seeing is that people are kind of challenging. One of the main things that characters are facing is challenging internal stereotypes. And I think Natalie before was asking, is it okay that the challenge can be internal and not external? And I think that's totally fine. For many characters and for many stories, the challenge is all internal. It's all focused on the internal piece and the focus on, overcoming your own insecurities or overcoming your own challenges, rather than, it's not always fighting an external force. You're not always fighting the evil empire. Sometimes you're just fighting the evil empire inside yourself. All right. Okay. Our next prompt is long too, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to go through this. But there were just so many great arcs in here. Michelle and I and the rest of the ProWritingAid team have been talking about creating like a written with ProWritingAid page, or collecting all of these stories. And every time we do one of these write-ins, I'm like, we've got to collect all these stories that we're working on here. Okay. So the whole goal today was to try out a bunch of different types of outlining. So for those of you who are outliners, you can try something new, or for those of you who identify more as pantsers, you can try on a couple different types of outlines to see what works best for you. So for our last prompt today, we're going to do a mind map. So this is going to be a little bit challenging to share out in the chat after. So maybe after we finish this one, you can just kind of describe what you have written or give us a couple of the words, but we're going to be working on a mind map. And let me pull up an image of what this looks like. And again, the goal here is just to try out a couple of different things. So basically for this mind map, you're going to be writing your book topic kind of as general as possible, the theme in a really big circle in the middle, and circle it. Then you're going to take other themes, topics, and that type of thing and put them in smaller circles around the big circle in the middle of the page. You want to kind of bubble out and try different aspects, different ideas. Here's what one could look like. Again, you kind of have your main idea here in the center. You have some bigger ideas and themes and that type of thing around that. I don't want to tell you the right or wrong way to do this here. Again, the goal is to put something big in the center, your kind of main theme, your main challenge, your main struggle in the middle. And then we're going to just branch off of that with other themes, other ideas, characters, relationships, all of that type of thing. And we're really just going to try this and see how it goes. It's totally okay if you don't like mind maps or you don't want to work on this one. If you want to go back to the others, that's fine too. But I am going to try this myself because I think it's just a really interesting way of trying it out. So again, big one in the center, then we're going to tier out with other ideas from there. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll have 10 minutes for this one, and then we'll bring it back together. Again, we might have to get creative for how we show them, but we'll try this together for our last prompt. I'm going to go ahead and start this, and then just because a couple people were asking, we will send out the replay with this after it goes. It should be going out by tomorrow, so you will get the replay from this session tomorrow. All right, 10 minutes for our mind map. Let's begin. Just in case you're having trouble, I found this image and I'm putting it up if anyone is struggling to think about how to mind map with fiction. So here are some of the examples of what you could put up there for your different areas. I know Annie said that they were struggling a bit with fiction. So here's an example of what you could try to work with. We've got about 7 minutes left. We have just over 1 minute left. Okay, time is up. We will come back together. There have been some really great things happening in the chat, which is so exciting. A lot of people were finding that they liked this more than they thought they would, which is great. Annie had said that they weren't sure that they would like this at first and then really liked it. I think a couple other people were saying, yeah, really liking this. And I think I actually find mind mapping really helpful for me as well. If we I think it helps. Was it James in the chat? Someone was saying that this helped bring out themes in a way that other types of outlining doesn't. And I totally agree. I think that mind mapping really gets you to think about other pieces, and sometimes just writing a word or just connecting all of the pieces together in this a little bit more visual way really just lets you connect the dots in a way that it doesn't when you're linearly ordering things. So I'm really excited to see so many of you who are mind mapping skeptics come back to other things. And Marv, I totally agree. I think that's what's nice, is that it helps fit things into containers. And I really like how you said that it helps not forget things, because as I've kind of mentioned a couple times this session, that is something that I am very guilty of, focusing a lot on, my protagonist and a lot on my plot A and that type of thing. And then the other pieces, so sometimes setting, for instance, I really like mind mapping around setting, because I'll start to think about not just the setting as it relates to the plot points, but overall, what do I want to do? So this has been great. Yeah. Oh, Jen Kidwell says that this exercises have helped advance my characters and plot, which is wonderful. I'm so excited. Yeah. So Wendy, again, I think outlining is just something that you kind of come into at different points, right? And there were also some questions about the right and wrong way to approach this. So just as we close today, I think one of the things that I want you to take away is that outlining can and should be what you need it to be. This exercise has shown me that I am going to take outlining and use it for the parts of my books that I am not good at, and use it and lean into it to the parts that don't come naturally. And so again, when I'm thinking about my secondary characters that I don't give enough love to, I'm going to think through my character arcs. And when I'm thinking through setting and kind of how all these themes come together, I'm going to think about mind mapping. So I think this is just, and in some ways it's just a good exercise to get the writing muscle going. So I'm really glad to see that so many people are finding all of these prompts useful. I hope for those of you who had come into this as hard, tried and true pantsers, that I've shown you today that there are a lot of different ways to outline. It doesn't always have to be this prescriptive kind of one thing to another thing. You can think about it in a lot of different ways, and you can think about it as as what you need it to be. And I like what Wendy said, or sorry, what Wesley said about getting back into writing mode too. You know, so sometimes even just building a mind map or drawing a mind map or something like that can help you get back into the curve of your story if you've been away from it for a while. John, I'm so glad John says this was a utopia. They've been working on their outline for months. So I'm glad that this is helpful. Okay, we are just about out of time, so we're going to wrap up. I'm going to drop again into the chat our links. Please, if you are a fantasy writer or if you know any fantasy writers, come to our fantasy week, which is happening at the end of February. Or even if you're not a fantasy writer and just want to learn about writing, we're going to have some published bestsellers there. And then we're going to be doing a write-in as well. So even if you just want to participate in one or the other of the sessions, you're more than welcome to sign up. And again, please share that with anybody else who would be interested. We have other upcoming events. And if you want to stay up to date with all of the ProWritingAid upcoming events, please sign up for our newsletter. That is the best way. A couple of people have asked about saving the chat there. I think there's if you see under your, or to the right of where it says panelists and attendees in your chat button, there should be something that says save chat. I saved it though just now, so I will send it out with the replay tomorrow because it usually doesn't go with the replay, but I saved it and we'll send it out as a file. So thank you guys so much. It was so great to see you all. Michelle, any final words?
It was just so nice getting to see everyone's ideas. I love the concepts that everyone's working with. It's just so interesting, and I can't wait to one day read your finished works.
Yes, we're so excited. And here, let me just I'll drop Fantasy Week in again. In the blog post that this links to, you will get all of the information for it. And if you just go to ProWritingAid.com/webinars, you can also see Fantasy Week and all of our other upcoming webinars. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will catch you next time. Bye.